first field sobriety test is called the HGN, which stands for the horizontal gaze nystagmus. This is an eye test that is conducted by police officers when they think that somebody's intoxicated. Typically, they'll have already pulled over your vehicle or responded to a crash or something like that. And then they'll say, "Hey, I want to just do some tests with you to make sure you're okay to drive. Will you come over here and do that?" And people will just automatically do it. The first thing you should know is that you can refuse to give these tests. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get arrested. A lot of times, just refusing to do all the tests alone can get you arrested. But if they don't do any of the tests, then it's hard for them to collect evidence that you've lost the normal use of your mental and physical faculties. And therefore, it's harder for the state to prosecute the case. So the HGN test looks for different things in your eyes. Well, kind of the same thing in three different ways. It's called nystagmus. It is the involuntary jerking of the eye muscles, and this happens when alcohol effects or other central nervous system depressants affect your very tiny muscles that control your eye movement. So, if you move your eyes left to right, then and you're following a stimulus, that's what the officer is going to try to do. They're going to try to hold their finger or a pen about 12 to 15 inches away from your eyes and slightly above, and then move it back and forth like this. If they see this involuntary jerking of the eyes as they move it, they'll call that lack of smooth pursuit. If they see it in each of your eyes, that's 2 out of 6 clues. They will look and they will hold it all the way to the side, making you look as far over to the side as you can. And they'll call that, if they see your eye kind of twitching, bouncing like that, then they'll call that the second 2 clues, 1 in each eye, and that is nystagmus at maximum deviation. Then they approximate a 45-degree angle between your shoulder and your chest, basically. And if they see the nystagmus prior to reaching the 45 degrees, then they call that the third clue. It's pretty similar to the other ones. I don't know that every officer really understands what they're doing here, but they do get a significant amount of training in the academy on it. And most of the time, I find that jurors don't find this test particularly reliable because either they can't see the jerking of the eyes themselves or it's just too complex to explain. So the next test is the 9-step walk and turn. They're looking for 8 different clues in this test. An inability to maintain balance during the instruction phase, initiating the test prematurely or starting too soon, stopping while walking, failure to touch heel to toe on each step, stepping off of the line, using arms for balance, incorrect number of steps, and an improper execution of the turn, which is probably the strangest part of the test. They ask you to leave your lead foot planted and make a series of small steps pivoting around that lead foot. It's 9 steps forward, 9 steps back. I've seen people go as far as like 34 steps because the officer had not given the proper instructions to them on how many steps to go. Sometimes officers will give an instruction to take 3 steps instead of 9, and they'll do this because they are trying to demonstrate only 3 steps instead of taking the full 9 themselves. Sometimes it's because the officer is not particularly good at doing this while they're sober. And sometimes it's because of officer safety. They're trying to not turn their back to a suspect that they're detaining for a DWI investigation. But the horizontal gaze nystagmus and the HGN and the walk and turn combined, officers in their field sobriety training manual say that if you have the minimum number of clues, which is 2 out of 8 on this test, and you have 4 out of 6 on the HGN, that's like an 80% likelihood that someone has a alcohol concentration above 0.10 or 0.10, yeah. And this is all due to some studies that were done back in the 70s. They've been doing these same field sobriety tests on the roadside since then. Certainly, there's probably been some better ways to look at these things since then, but there's not a great incentive for law enforcement to do that. They're already trained. Many generations of law enforcement now have already been trained on these field sobriety tests, and they continue to do them. What most people do when they're on a jury, when they look at somebody in a DWI, is they're looking at this test right here in the one-leg stand as the main evidence. Did they think that you're doing this in a way that a sober person would do it, even if you make a few mistakes, or are you doing it in a way that somebody who's intoxicated might do it? There's a difference between stepping a little bit off the line and almost falling down. And that's kind of what we're looking for when we're watching a video to see if we have a good case for our client to take to trial. The last test for the standardized field sobriety test is the one leg stand test. And this is where you lift one foot approximately 6 inches off the ground. You point your toe, look at your toe, and count 1001, 1002, 1003, and so on until the officer tells you to stop. He actually doesn't tell you he's going to go for about 30 seconds, but he just tells you to keep doing it. He's looking to see if you hop on one foot, if you use your arms for balance, meaning lift them more than 6 inches away from your side. See if you sway back and forth, and see if you put your foot down before the 30 seconds goes up. So if you get 2 out of 4 clues on this test, then the officer is going to say that you are intoxicated based on this test. And so it can be a very good test for our clients if they're able to do well on it. And if you have particularly bad balance, you have bad knees, a bad ankle, you have an old sports injury, this test can be almost impossible for you. So it's important to have a look at the prior medical history of anybody who's taking this test so that you don't end up getting judged as intoxicated for something that's really out of your control.